You're listening to How to Drink Less, and I'm your host, Adriana Cloud. Whether your goal is to cut back, take a break, or say goodbye to alcohol for good, this podcast will help you stop drinking on autopilot, learn how to manage cravings, and feel fully in control around alcohol. It's easier than you think. Listen on to find out how. Welcome back, my friends. Today, I want to talk to you about joy and pleasure. We don't talk about them enough in general, but in the context of drinking especially, joy and pleasure get overlooked. And even as I considered doing an episode on this, a little voice inside my head was telling me it's frivolous to talk about joy. No one wants to hear this. You should be talking about more serious stuff. But I want to push back against that because joy is important. Let's first talk about how drinking affects our ability to feel joy. I spoke about that recently on another episode, but basically, alcohol decreases your capacity for experiencing joy and pleasure. In the most immediate and physical sense, because alcohol dulls your senses, you're not able to fully appreciate whatever pleasant sensations you're experiencing. For example, if you're eating a delicious meal, your ability to fully taste it is impaired if you're also drinking. If you're doing something that's physically pleasant in another way, sex being an obvious example, but we can also add things like basking in the sunlight, getting a massage, dancing, and so on. If you're doing anything that involves the physical body and you're also drinking at the same time, you're getting a filtered, less intense experience than if you were doing the same thing sober. It's like always looking at the world through a pair of sunglasses. If you wear them a lot, you get used to them, and you still can see different colors and enjoy a pleasant view, but you're not seeing the full-bodied, vibrant colors you would see if you took off the sunglasses. There is an emotional component to joy and pleasure as well. We're not just animals with physical bodies. We also have complex emotional lives, and we create meaning out of our environments and experiences. This means that our capacity to feel positive emotions is intellectual as well. In other words, we can experience certain things as pleasant or enjoyable because of the meaning we've attached to those things. For example, celebrating a friend's good news is not enjoyable in a physical way. We don't experience that with our senses, but with our minds. Or when your partner pays you a really thoughtful compliment that shows they really know you and see you for who you truly are. Or the tingly excitement you feel about an upcoming trip. These are all examples of positive emotions. But when you're drinking, your ability to experience those positive emotions is compromised. Good things just don't feel as good. That's the gist of it. That's because alcohol depresses the central nervous system, which means it slows down all brain activity. It's like a universal dimmer switch. It numbs everything. For those who are curious about how this works, it's because alcohol affects your neurotransmitters, which are the chemicals in your brain that carry information from one part of your brain to another. They're like little messengers. And alcohol enhances the production of GABA, which is a neurotransmitter that makes you feel calm or drowsy. And it also suppresses glutamate, which is a neurotransmitter that keeps you alert and emotionally responsive. This is why, after a drink or two, you might feel more relaxed, but also more foggy or blurry. Your thoughts are fuzzier and your responses are slower. And all your sensations, reactions, and emotions are dulled across the board. The main thing to note here is that you can't numb selectively. It just doesn't work like that. When you use alcohol to numb pain or overwhelm or frustration, it also numbs joy, excitement, connection, creativity, sexual pleasure, gratitude, and even just that nice feeling of being present in your body and with your surroundings. It's like a sensory and emotional anesthesia. You might not feel the prick of a needle, but you also don't feel the sun on your skin. And this is just what happens in the moment, in the short term. But unfortunately, there are long-term consequences as well. When you drink alcohol, you get a huge hit of dopamine, which is the happy hormone that plays a key part in the brain's reward system. But because alcohol is a man-made substance, it releases artificially high levels of dopamine, much higher than what we have evolved to be able to process. So we get this massive hit of pleasure, and the brain is paying attention. The brain now thinks, ooh, this felt really good, exceptionally good. I must have more of this. But now the bar for what feels good has been set really high. Your brain gets used to the unnaturally high levels of dopamine, and everything else starts to fade in comparison. Things and experiences that used to feel pleasant and fun in the past no longer register as pleasurable because your brain is now comparing them to the high that you get from alcohol. So, in the past, you might have enjoyed a nice cup of tea, watching the sunset, or snuggling with your dog on the couch. But at some point, these things start to feel only okay, or maybe they're just meh now. You might have had a similar experience if you ever ate a candy bar before eating a piece of fruit. The candy bar has a lot more sugar than the natural amounts of sugar found in, say, an apple. So if you had eaten the apple first, you'd probably find it quite enjoyable and sweet and delicious. But coming after the high sugar treat, it's going to taste very bland and not sweet at all. The apple suffers by comparison because the threshold for sweetness has been set super high by the candy bar. And so it is with joy and pleasure. In comparison to alcohol, other things and experiences feel a bit blah and forgettable. And also, over time, as your brain gets used to the high levels of dopamine, you start to need more and more alcohol just to feel the same effect. There's this idea that each person has a baseline level of happiness. It's called the hedonic set point, and it's thought to remain pretty stable throughout our lives. But with long-term exposure to alcohol, your hedonic set point resets, as I've already described, because of the unnaturally high highs that you get from alcohol. The result is that your life starts to feel dull unless you're drinking. And the other thing that happens if you're used to searching for joy and entertainment at the bottom of a glass is that you gradually lose your capacity to create joy for yourself. This is true for most people in general, I must say. When we're kids, we're a lot better at creating our own fun. Kids are naturally able to amuse and entertain themselves for hours on end. We all possess this ability, but over time, as we grow up, we lose it. We start to rely on external things to provide amusement, like books, TV, video games, social media, and so on. So we become consumers of entertainment rather than creators of it. As I said, this is the trajectory for most people, but it's especially true for people who drink or use other substances to alter their consciousness and their emotional state. The more you outsource your joy to alcohol or to drugs or to social media, the more you lose your ability to create joy for yourself. It's like a muscle or a skill that you don't use, or like a language you studied in school but you never practice. As time goes by, you forget how to speak and you lose your vocabulary. And the long-term effect of all of this is that at some point, it starts to feel like alcohol is the only thing that gives you joy and pleasure. You become dependent on it for your dopamine hit. And as you might imagine, that just reinforces the pattern that you're stuck in. So if you've ever wondered why you don't enjoy things like you used to, or why you feel happy only when you're drinking, this might be why. It's not a sign that you're broken or morally bankrupt. It's a sign that your brain has adapted to the chemical reactions that happen when you drink, and it has learned to use alcohol as the shortcut to positive emotions. And if we stay with the shortcut analogy, perhaps you can picture it. Imagine many different paths in the woods leading to the same beautiful clearing. But one day you find a shortcut that takes you there much faster than any of the other paths. And so that becomes the only path you use. What happens to the other paths over time? Yep, they start to disappear. The less you use them, the more they become overgrown, and it's hard to tell where they even were until one day you simply can't find them anymore. So you might be wondering, what should you do next? First, just start noticing how much of what I've just described applies to you. Do you notice that things you used to really enjoy in the past don't seem that appealing anymore? Do you struggle to come up with ways to entertain yourself? Does it seem like alcohol is the only pleasure you have in your day? If you answer yes to any of these, please know you're not alone. And the good news is that this is all reversible. And awareness is the first step towards change. So just sit with that awareness for a bit. And then start to look for ways to bring more joy into your life. Now, if you've been using alcohol as a way to filter your experience of life for a while, you might actually realize that you no longer know yourself very well. That was certainly me. When I started to work on my drinking habits, I became painfully aware that I really had no idea what I liked. So much of what I did outside of work was done accompanied by alcohol, and so it was hard to tell if I really enjoyed the things that I did, or if alcohol simply made them tolerable and that's why I did them. That and just the force of habit. There was a period of experimentation where I was paying better attention to my experience. I Marie Kondoed my life, basically. Does this spark joy? I asked myself. And many things in my life did not spark joy, let me tell you. And some of those things and activities I have since removed from my life, and others I've adapted or learned to like sober if removing them was not an option. And same with people. I realized that there were some people in my life with whom I didn't actually have very much in common besides drinking, or people whose company I preferred to enjoy in much smaller doses when I was sober. This is my invitation for you to start to gently reconnect with joy and pleasure in your life. You could ask yourself, what used to bring me joy as a kid? Or what lights me up now, even if it's just a little spark of excitement? Or where do I already feel a tinge of playfulness or pleasure? And it's okay if you don't have an immediate list of things or activities that you can name as enjoyable. This is normal. Remember that, in a way, you're reawakening your senses and emotions after a long period of hibernation. So don't be too harsh on yourself or pressure yourself to, quote unquote, get this right. There are no wrong answers here, and you can start small. Try something new or revisit something you've done in the past and just stay curious and notice how it feels. And remember, the more you create space for actual joy, the less appealing the artificial joy of alcohol starts to feel. It's a win-win situation. You're not just saying goodbye to alcohol, but you are creating a much richer and more authentic life. I should warn you, in early sobriety, after you stop numbing, but before you've discovered other sources of joy, it can feel bleak for a while. When you stop giving your brain the huge hits of dopamine it has become accustomed to, it takes a while for your neurotransmitters to adjust, and you might initially have more frequent stretches of feeling down, uninspired, and just a bit blah about everything. And even if your goal is not to fully remove alcohol from your life, but just to reduce how much you drink, you might still experience this effect while you're in the process of transitioning and learning how to drink differently. This is normal. This is your brain rewiring itself and learning to function properly without alcohol. It's like if you've been sitting in darkness for a while and then suddenly you turn on the light, it takes a while for your eyes to adjust before you can see things clearly. The same thing happens when you stop drinking. There's a period of adjustment. And as they say, what goes up must come down. So after the high highs of alcohol, you might experience some low lows once you stop drinking. But please rest assured, this is temporary. We are blessed with neuroplasticity, which means that our brains have the ability to form new connections and rewire themselves. With time and practice, your brain will learn to feel joy without alcohol. How long this takes will vary from person to person, so I cannot give you a timeline, unfortunately. But trust that it's happening and be patient. Your brain is more powerful than you realize, and it's programmed to seek and repeat experiences that feel good, so it will get there. Just be patient. And you can start small. I've had this practice for years that I call small joys, and it consists of me posting on social media about a few things that I found joyful that day. A lot of them have to do with sensual experiences, things that I've seen, things I've tasted, things I've heard or smelled or touched, things like cherries, fresh towels, rose-scented soap, a favorite song on repeat with the volume on max, the smell of rain through open windows, bare feet on the grass, salted butter, the first cup of coffee in the morning, pink post-its. But of course, anything can be a small joy. A text from a friend arriving in the exact moment when you're thinking about them, starting a new jigsaw puzzle, dictionaries, if you happen to be a person obsessed with words, like I am, the meme that captures your mood perfectly, a cute dog that you meet on your walk. You get the idea. Anything can be a small joy if you're looking. As a species, we have an ingrained negativity bias because that's been evolutionarily advantageous for our survival. In other words, by nature, we're more likely to notice the negative things around us, and we're more likely to worry about bad things happening than to anticipate positive outcomes. When left unattended, your brain will veer towards the negative real fast. But with practice, you can retrain your brain to notice more good things. Just keep asking it to show you what feels good, what looks or smells or sounds nice around you, what you're grateful for or excited about. And the more you do this, the easier it gets. Joy doesn't have to be grand or mind-blowing or once-in-a-lifetime experience to be real. And the more you can learn to enjoy the small everyday stuff, the more joy you will have. I hope this episode has inspired you to brainstorm ways to diversify the sources of joy in your life. And I'd love to hear what you come up with. Email me and let me know what new joys you add in or what old joys you rediscover. And if you feel stuck and need support, you can book a free consultation with me via the link in the show notes, and we can talk about your unique challenges and next steps. I tell you, there's so much more pleasure in my life now that I'm sober, and I would love to help you create that for yourself as well. You deserve this. So book your free call and let's talk. That's it from me. Have a good week, and I'll talk to you soon. If you're looking for practical advice for how to say no to alcohol and say yes to yourself, you will want to get on my email list. Sign up to receive my free guide with 7 steps to kickstart your sobriety. The link is in the show notes, so go and grab it now, and I'll see you soon in your inbox.